Welcome to Marketing Brew Weekly, where we dissect the trends and strategies that are surprising and delighting the marketing industry. I'm Jenny Wynn, reporter at Marketing Brew.
I'm Kelsey Sutton, editor.
And I'm Katie Hicks, senior reporter.
Happy April Fool's Day from us here on the pod. But is it a holiday that's worth celebrating, especially for brands? We have thoughts. All right, well, it might be April Fool's Day, but I actually have a very serious announcement at the top of the podcast, which is that we are nominated for a Webby. Yay! Which is so exciting. We literally just found out today. Yes. So we are here to ask you guys to vote for us. It is decided by votes. So anyone can vote. The link to vote is in the show notes. Very easy to find at the very top. Go on in there, click it. Give us a vote if you so desire.
Yeah, if you listen to us every week, we would really appreciate it.
It'd be really nice.
It would really make our day.
Yeah, so that's our exciting news at the top. But it is, in fact, April Fool's Day, and we have a lot of things to discuss about this brand holiday that it has become.
Absolutely. So I have been off for a couple days on some PTO, and I came back and my inbox was chock full of April Fool's Day announcements from brands. And this is not the first time this has happened, but let's get into it. What have some of you guys seen? Because I, frankly, opened my email and immediately slammed it closed. I was like, I got to talk to Katie and Jenna about this.
You're like, this is actually a nightmare for me to sift through.
I do feel like it's the holiday that I get the most pitches for.
Totally.
It's just, there are so many brands activating on April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
But one that stood out to me, Olipop, the soda brand, partnered with Good Wipes to make peachy clean butt wipes. I saw that subject line and I closed my inbox.
I threw my laptop out the window. There's also more in like the
butt category,
butt wipes category.
This is just like the Super Bowl.
Truly unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that we're starting this episode with this. But Dude Wipes is a brand, and I think we've talked about them on the pod before. They put out pumpkin spice scented hygiene wipes in the fall.
Not a joke. Those were serious.
They're releasing, again, an April Fool's butt mask, spelled with two S's.
It is
Of course.
The visual is heinous.
If you're watching on YouTube, it's very upsetting.
What is it, Kelsey? Tell us.
I feel like it's like a silicone mask for what they're saying, your third eye. So, you interpret that the way that it's intended to be interpreted.
Don't open that picture while at work. We all learned
true.
that the hard way, seeing that pitch in our inboxes.
I didn't even think about that. I was like, well, this is what my job is, I guess. But yeah, so there are truly insane things out there. There are even more examples that, like, I'm sure we will discuss at length throughout the rest of this episode. But I feel like the whole bit of April Fool's has been like more and more outrageous, and also everywhere. As we said, like, our inboxes are full of it, which is unique to us in our jobs. But also I feel like as soon as you open social media on April 1st, people are naturally apprehensive from like the very get-go. And it's like the second you see a brand post something, everyone's like, ugh, April Fool's joke, probably.
I mean, there are multiple think pieces that are like, please brands stop. I remember in 2020, like during COVID, a lot of brands didn't post about it because it was like a brand safety concern. They were like, we shouldn't do jokes right now. And then there were thought pieces written about like, hey, this is actually great. The brands are not participating in April Fool's Day this year. But then sure enough, they came back. I mean, but yeah, to your point, social media has really made it an inundation of campaigns that people are like, I think at this point, they just assume if you release something on the 1st, they're like, yeah, that's not real. There's no way that's real.
Right. Which is why I want to dive deeper into like why brands do this in the first place and what makes a good April Fool's campaign, whether it's actually worth it to do it. Like, what is the point of actually getting in on it when like the three of us are sitting here and being like, oh my God, it's such like an eye roll. And it's not just us. Like, genuinely anyone in regular people land that I've ever talked to is like, ugh, like, it's April Fool's Day. Like, nothing to take seriously from these brands. So what do you guys think? What is the point of even getting involved on this day at this point?
I think it shows that your brand is like fun. Like, I mean, looking back, I actually thought that this was like really a newer phenomenon. But if you look back, like Taco Bell ran a full page newspaper ad in 1996 saying that they were going to buy the Liberty Bell. They read in like the Philly Inquirer and the Washington Post, and people freaked out. They called their hotline and they were like, "What are you doing? Don't do this." And then Taco Bell ultimately donated like $50,000 to the National Park Service. They were like, "Sorry, we upset people. We're actually going to give money to the restoration of the Liberty Bell." But I mean, at the time, I think there was like, it's all in good jest. And they're not the only ones. Like, there were other brands that did newspaper ads. Burger King had a left-handed Whopper ad that they ran in 1998.
Sure.
And I think that in the 80s, BMW also ran a newspaper ad saying that they had a rain-proof sunroof.
Funny.
But I think that's such an interesting kind of, I love that we kind of dug back into the archives for this, because I think something that's so interesting about it is at those moments, maybe the American consumer was a little bit less cynical.
Totally.
A little bit more willing to kind of see something and say, this is true. And I think that the current, like the modern American consumer approaches so many things with a healthy or perhaps unhealthy for the state of the world, but a huge dose of skepticism for most things that they see on the internet. And I think that that kind of takes the wind out of the sails of any sort of April Fool's prank or jest or even product. I think that some brands push it a little beyond just a fake announcement or a fake press release. They push it to actually releasing something limited edition that's silly and goofy. And I think that, you know, the consumer sees that and they're like, oh, I know what this is, versus really catching them, which I think can have maybe higher risk, but also higher reward. If your immediate consumer response is like, oh, so annoying, I don't know if that's really
What's the point?
the purpose,
Yeah.
right? So I wonder kind of what some of these brands are hoping is these sort of intended reaction.
Yeah.
I did see a tweet. Bunch of Crunch announced that they were going to make like a concession dispenser that released popcorn with Bunch of Crunch into a bucket.
I'm so
this
in.
year. And someone, yeah, there were tweets where people were like, "If this is an April Fool's Day prank, I swear to God." Like they were like. People sometimes really want what a brand is promising, and then when they
totally.
find out it's a joke, they're like, "Come on, like I
mean,
wanted that."
I'm a Bunch of Crunch girl. Like, if I could put that into my popcorn bucket with a fun little machine, I would genuinely do that. Again, I am too skeptical at this point to think that this is real, but yeah, it's annoying if you're like actually a fan of that particular innovation, and then you're like, oh, I'm let down, which is kind of what you were saying, Kelsey, where it's like, if you don't kind of account for that or like think about that as like a potential reaction or the very likely reaction, what was the point of getting involved in the first place? Because people are no longer excited or like think that it's funny. They're actually walking away from this moment with like this like annoyance and like let down feeling. But I do think it can present an opportunity for these brands to make some of these products real, right? Which we have seen in past years, and I'm sure we'll see this year, of like either brands will come to the campaign with the plan to actually make something real, or sometimes the response is so that they are like, oh, maybe we actually should make this thing because people seem to actually like it.
I kind of love it as an example of like social listening or audience listening. You trial balloon an idea, but you have plausible deniability. You could be like, that was fake. Yeah.
No, never mind. We're not doing that.
We were kidding.
I love the idea of like some marketing girlies being like, this is the craziest idea I've ever had. And April
it
Fool's Day
might work.
might be a good time to like literally pitch it. Like the boardroom said no, but let's just do it as a joke. And then you get all of social media on your side.
You get proof like that
Yeah.
this may be worth actually looking into in some limited edition round. Because we see brands doing this all the time, right? To stay in cultural conversation, right? A limited edition collab or something that's a little eye-catching or maybe, you know, you stop on the street when you hear about it. And April Fool's is kind of like a you know, just it's like a well-structured time to do it rather than like a random Thursday. You're like, let's release that collab and
That
see
would
what happens.
not work on a random Thursday. I
No.
would scroll right past, which I guess I do sometimes too on April Fools. But if your idea is interesting enough, it might break through, which I feel like is the other catch of April Fools, especially with it becoming such a brand moment, is that like every single thing is an April Fool's prank or joke. So how do you stand out? Is it even worth like being a part of it if you're just another brand in the crowd? What do you guys think?
I think, yeah, when I wrote about April Fools a couple years ago, and I talked to Duolingo right after they did their Love Language, like fake Love Island spinoff show. And that led to like a huge boost in like impressions and like brand sentiment for them. And I think that was because that was so clearly like a joke, but it was also kind of like a skit. The whole premise was that you've got a bunch of contestants on Love Island who like don't speak the same language. So they're using Duolingo to communicate with each other. So it's kind of just like a funny, entertaining video more than it was like a bait and switch where it's like, we have this cool product. Just kidding. We don't. Like, I think people are just entertained by it. And they're like, this is a funny concept.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of feeds back to something we've talked about at length before, is just like brands today are just entertainment machines as well. And using April Fool's Day as an opportunity to entertain rather than to prank and to fool your customer might actually be worth it. And I wonder if more brands will be doing that this year in the style of Duolingo, especially if they've like built out their entertainment departments, as we've been keeping an eye on around here.
Right. Something I was thinking about when we were talking about some of these like hygiene wipes kind of gross out April Fool's pranks. I feel like that also taps into the humor. Like we talked about this during the Super Bowl. There was a lot of potty humor at the Super Bowl. And so it's kind of like, this is a crowd pleaser for a certain type of consumer. And if the brand has decided that this consumer is totally game, like a gross out moment that, you know, will make them laugh will work. It won't work on me, but I'm not the target customer. You know what I mean?
I don't see wipes making me want to sip on an Olipop. I don't quite see the connection there.
Well, so I actually think that's an interesting strategy, like kind of sub-strategy of April Fools that deserves a little bit of a spotlight too, is I do feel like there's a lot of like surprise collabs that come up on this day. So like Olipop and a Good Wipes, like that's not something that should happen in the natural world. And that's part of the bit, right? And I think there are other ones that I'm sure will come up this year, but like it's a funny time to be like, should we collab with this random brand that like we have no business collabing with, which kind of could potentially bring two like very different audiences together. Like I imagine there's not a ton of overlap in Olipop versus Good Wipes. There might be. Everyone has a butt, whatever. But like
It's to that point, it's probably like
interesting.
a brand awareness play. Like if there's another brand that does not overlap with your audience, but you want to get in front of them, it's a good opportunity to work with that brand and be like, okay, now we're getting in front of the Good Wipes audience who maybe isn't aware of Olipop or vice versa.
Yeah. The other interesting strategy I think has come out is, Katie and I were talking about this a little bit beforehand, the idea of kind of like using April Fool's Day to like kind of have a breakout moment, especially as a smaller brand. Tell us a little bit more about that. What have you seen?
Just scrolling through my inbox, I just noticed there were a lot of brands that like I had personally never heard of, or they were like smaller brands. And I feel like just the quantity of small brands that were doing something on April Fool's Day kind of felt to me like it was a strategy of just like having a breakthrough moment and like standing out. Again, with so many brands participating, like, can you stand out? You really have to have something like outrageous. But I do feel like smaller brands are using this as an opportunity to like maybe draw some attention to the brand that otherwise people might not know about.
And there's this whole cottage industry around April Fools. People write roundups of like the craziest collabs or fake products or whatever, And I think for a small brand, there's an opportunity to break through because maybe this is feels a little inside baseball, but earned media is a very real phenomenon. So if you're looking to get on one of those lists, the cultural cachet that comes from being included in a roundup from a national publication or something like that can serve as a breakthrough moment. It might not be huge, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah. The example I'll give here is Boca, which is a toothpaste brand that I had personally never heard of, is doing a mushroom coffee flavored toothpaste, which is also a collab with mushroom supplement brand Fresh Cap. That is a collection of words I have never uttered before in my life. But
I don't think many people have.
The founding fathers would have never guessed that these words.
A Victoria child would keel over at that sentence.
I think the deepest cut one that I saw was Deep Indian Kitchen, no pun intended, with the chicken curry protein shake. I was like,
gross.
Well,
yeah.
see, again,
but they're getting attention from us.
Yeah.
They're getting mentioned on the pod.
Yeah. And if that's the goal, and somebody going, oh gosh, that like makes my stomach turn, like maybe that's just part of part of it.
Yeah, and it gets your brand name out there. Like those were ones that we just admitted we had never heard of before. But now I'm
now we
like,
know.
what's Boca? Perhaps I will keep an eye on it. Another little piece actually of the Boca campaign that I think is interesting that I've seen in other campaigns too is that, yes, it's an April Fool's joke, but if you click on it, if you engage with however they're putting it out there, whether it's social media or the website, I can't remember off the top of my head, but a certain amount of people will get a giveaway element. So they're not the only ones doing this. Other brands are doing this as well. I think that's an interesting piece of it because the bait and switch of it is frustrating, right? But if you get something out of it, I'd be like, whatever, I'm getting free product.
It does remind me though. So like talking about the risks of a bad April Fool's Day prank, there was in 2001, Hooters made a win a Toyota campaign on April 1st. And it was for their employees. And the employee that won was handed a toy space Yoda doll from Star Wars. She sued them.
Diabolical.
She sued them for breach of contract and misrepresentation, and she won. So like Hooters lost a lawsuit because they were doing a little prank. Like you have to like be very careful about how you're framing things and how
that
you're
was with
presenting it
an
to people.
employee,
Yeah.
like not even just like the general public.
But also there are other examples of like brand campaigns that have gone south. Like in 2018, Elon Musk tweeted on April Fool's Day that Tesla was going bankrupt. The stock then dropped 7%.
Oh my God.
Also in 2021, a few years ago, Volkswagen accidentally published their April Fool's Day press release a day early, saying they were changing their name to Volkswagen to promote their electric cars. Their stock rose 5% as a result because people thought they were like going to announce a huge investment in electric cars. And then they had to retract and be like, oh, sorry, that was a joke.
Whoa, and that has real implications because there are rules about what you tell your investors.
Exactly. So that's
And
like
it's
an
not-
SEC problem.
It doesn't pause on April 1st.
There's no exclusion clause that's like, just kidding, nothing matters on April 1st.
On April 1st, you can say whatever you want and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. The markets are closed.
So you have to be really careful what you're like, it's a joke. No, like it's not a joke to the SEC.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Wow, that's some real world implications. I feel like I was just thinking of like when customers get annoyed, but yeah, like your business could genuinely suffer if you don't think through all of the consequences, which I feel like is always something that like we discuss in a various amount of ways on the show and in our jobs of like how does something like that happen when like things are vetted so much. I imagine an April Fool's Day campaign is probably not the most heavily vetted thing. It's a joke at the end of the day. And like you said, Kelsey, it's like you can kind of put it out there and then be like, just kidding, I take it back. But when it has like serious implications like that, is it worth like having more eyes on your April Fool's Day campaign? Maybe.
Or even if there aren't like legal risks, sometimes you just like disappoint people. Like in addition to like people wanting a product that maybe they can't have, like a few years ago in 2021, the White House like created a job listing for a dog walker for the Bidens that was like $100,000 salary per year. And then at the bottom of the job listing, it said April Fool's. But like, I'm sure people applied to that job thinking like, oh my God, an incredible opportunity, like a high paying job, like for dog walking. And then they were like, oh.
Right. And I honestly think that we should emphasize, like, when you make a consumer feel bad, like if you, I mean, in that case, it's the White House is not really a consumer, but you know what I mean? If you make a person feel bad, like that will bleed onto the brand affinity. You know what I mean? Like if you read something and you're like, oh my God, is this real? Like I'm having these real reactions. And then somebody's like, I was lying. Like, cause that's basically what April Fool's is.
Yeah.
It's like, I tricked you. That's not necessarily a good feeling that people have. So I feel like something we talk about sometimes is brands letting consumers in on the joke, like letting people feel like they're part of something, feel like they're, you know, included, they're having fun. I love the Duolingo example because it's like, I am entertained whether or not I know this is real or not, because you can make spoofs and satires in commercials, right? Like entertainment stuff can be funny and fun, even if it's a little joke. And if everyone's in on it, it can be a really fun brand building experience. I think that if somebody really does take it seriously, that you could leave a really bad taste in somebody's mouth. And sometimes, like very literally, when I think of mushroom coffee flavored toothpaste, that really
Literally gross.
bums me out.
Yeah. It's keeping an eye on like what the stakes of the situation are, right? Like something like the White House dog walking example, like people's jobs are serious matters. And if you were given an opportunity to make $100,000 a year, Like
That was also like the
serious.
post-COVID economy. Like people
Yeah.
are struggling to find jobs. So I think just like you have to remember the context of the news and the landscape you're operating in too. Like
Totally.
I wouldn't be making an April Fool's Day joke this year about like the cost of living. Like
Yeah,
that would not
no.
land well.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
definitely not. Well, April Fool's Day is not the only holiday that brands have turned into brand holidays. What are other ones that you guys think have just become brand bonanzas?
Oh, I feel like Valentine's Day is a huge one. Maybe St. Pat. No, I don't know about St. Patrick's Day. Maybe
Teetering,
The
maybe.
holidays,
Yeah.
I mean, Christmas,
Yeah.
New Year's, like
Yeah.
a lot of brand activity.
I feel
there.
like we've seen a lot of like Prime Day. I feel like is a great example, like
Oh,
a full
a
holiday
holiday.
invented out of nothing.
Yeah.
that now other brands are also engaging in as like, alternate programming to Prime. But I think honestly, any theme, like people love a theme, and I think a brand loves a theme as much as like a person because you can easily make marketing materials around it, right? And it's like, I'm current, I'm fun. This is, you should look at it now, right? I don't know. Are there other ones that
It's also just like easy to plan ahead for when you're making
Yeah.
a content calendar. It's like what evergreen events are happening this year.
You know
Holidays.
exactly when it's coming. You can plan way far in advance. Totally. I do think it's interesting that even though they are consistent, same day every year holidays, I do think that most brands, if you're being smart about holidays, you should be paying attention to what is happening culturally around that time of year. And that does change every year. I wrote about Valentine's Day last year and how last year there was this big phenomenon of brands like literally helping people find love and putting on dating events and getting people out in the real world. And it was kind of like a very positive thing. And that's like one specific phenomenon. But this year, our colleague Christina wrote a story about how some brands like were not lovey-dovey and just did not choose to like tap into that, or they were doing Valentine's Day in a different way that didn't emphasize like the feel-good moment of it all. And I think that's interesting. It's two very different takes on a holiday that maybe like if you were to do dating events this year, it wouldn't have hit as much, even though it's literally the exact same holiday. So I don't know. Interesting to keep an eye out for.
It feels like deceptively simple.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's just Valentine's Day. Just do a Valentine's Day post. It's just April Fool's. But it's like, no. These cannot be like easy one-off little lifts because that could either fall flat and nobody sees it, likes it, engages with it, or it could actually make a consumer set feel really bad.
Yeah. I will say that the other benefit of holidays, and I feel this especially with April Fools, is that oftentimes for a brand, they're pretty simply celebrated just on social these days. Obviously, we went to the archives and we found those newspaper ads, and like that takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more of like an actual ad buy. But it's free to post on social media on your own accounts. Like it is so easy to just put a post out there. And like, what is the real risk from that perspective of like, if no one engages with it, no one engages with it. It's fine. You didn't spend anything on that. And you can kind of say that for any holiday, which is very fascinating.
Even for things that you wouldn't think of as a holiday, like we talked about like Taylor Swift's album release way back when.
Yeah.
I guarantee you when her wedding day comes around, we're going to see so many brands treating it like another holiday. Like any high impact cultural event to a brand is an opportunity to like post something on their own accounts.
And why not? Why would you not get involved? Like we said the same thing with the Taylor Swift album and engagement announcement where it's like, okay, like you kind of roll your eyes because so many brands got in on it, but it didn't cost them anything to get in on it, to post a little orange sparkly version of their logo or whatever it is. So it is very easy to get in on it. The other holiday I want to call out this year that I think will be interesting is July 4th because it is the America 250 anniversary. And I'm sure there are things already underway. Christina also wrote a story about Ancestry is doing a very interesting campaign that they kicked off in January that's all about like untold stories in American history. So that's related to that. But it'll be interesting to see what brands do for such like a monumental anniversary, but also obviously a politically charged environment that we're in right now. So have you guys seen anything yet? Are you keeping an eye out?
I haven't, but I'm also curious to see what happens with Pride this year because I've written about this in years past, how Pride is just getting quieter and quieter every year and brands are kind of pulling back from it. So that used to be like a staple, I would say, like over the last 10 plus years that brands would participate in it and like sponsor Pride parades and things like that. But now it feels like it's more of a brand quiet month. They are not participating in the way that they used to.
Yeah, definitely.
And I do think, again, consumers, particularly younger ones, are so primed to look at whether brands engage or not on certain moments as evidence of a political kind of position or a statement about something, because younger consumers are more primed in general to like make purchasing decisions based on like the assumed or stated ethos of a brand or a company. And so I think that that's a really going to be an interesting moment because, you know, I think, again, Pride, like you said, we've seen a big pullback. America 250 also is like kind of, it's like, what does a brand have to say about their story or the America story, and what is that? And I think that there's a lot probably of meetings dedicated to that sort of decision.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about for sure. Well, there are plenty of holidays on the calendar, but is there any that you guys think brands should be paying more attention to that they haven't already been?
I wish I had seen more brands post about International Women's Day because, frankly, we only got 23 hours that day. It was daylight savings time. So I think the least we could have gotten is a shout out from, you know, some random brands.
So true. Give all the women something free. That's what I want at the end of the day.
An hour back.
Yeah, everyone's sleeping.
Give me free products.
Totally. I think this is silly, but Arbor Day? Anyone giving a little love to the trees?
Love a tree.
Yeah.
That actually brings me to what I was going to say, which is I feel like we've seen a lot of like greenwashy Earth Day. And this is Earth Day is in April, I think.
Yes,
So
coming up.
I feel like brands could be like, we'll send us your old packaging, we'll recycle it. Do something real, like actually real for Earth Day. Don't just be like, we have packaging that is still plastic, but it's green this time.
We dyed it.
Different color.
Yeah.
Totally. That is something I would actually use. I have a lot of things that I'm like, I don't know if I can recycle this. Like, I just let it pile up in my house. So yeah, I'm on board. That is something.
Yeah, or even like a clothing drive or something, you know?
Definitely. Something useful to consumer at the end of the day.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And one last reminder to send us a vote for the Webbies if you so want to support us. And if you have questions, thoughts, concerns, April Fool's Day, brand holidays, anything in that world, send us an email at mkbw, which you can find in the show notes along with that Webbies voting link. See you next week.